please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Clay Link here with Todd Zola of RotoWire Masters Ball. Good to be talking with you today, Todd. Big news earlier this afternoon. Trevor Bauer finally finding a home. Not where I was expecting and not where Bob Nightingale was expecting. He's really getting it on Twitter today. And probably deservedly so, but we all get him wrong occasionally. But Trevor Bauer to the Dodgers. The rich get richer. It's kind of annoying as a fan of any other NL team, but that's why they play. You don't just give away the trophy before the season. Trevor Bauer to the Dodgers. Any immediate factors with him? Like, how does the park affect him and his rank?
Well, real quick, I mean, I leave this sort of stuff to other people, but you say the rich get richer. It's those that want to spend get richer, because I think there are 30 teams that can afford Trevor Bauer. He wouldn't go to 30 teams, but there are 30 teams that would not miss any meals if they had signed him. But it's just the way that the league has ended up. But anyway, yeah, from a projector's point of view, the park helps Trevor Bauer. Not every player gets affected linearly, but Dodger Stadium is a good place to pitch, so that is a positive. We can sort of go over our rankings if you want, but for me, it doesn't move the needle a lot, but it makes him a little closer to Darvish and Bieber. It kind of makes it, if you believe that, we can talk about this too, if you believe that Trevor Bauer is going to start more than 32 games, maybe it pushes him up the rankings a bit. But that's how close it is between Darvish, Bieber, and Bauer. You can combine those names into one, like Benefer kind of easily. Yeah,
you really can. In that division, I mean, when they're facing off against each other, you'll see that on Twitter. But yeah, I look at Bauer, and if you think he's going to make an additional 5 starts, maybe it becomes a big 4 with Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, and Shane Bieber. I just am not quite willing to put him in that group, mostly because I don't expect the Dodgers to really let him start much on just 3 days rest. Maybe it could happen. He's mentioned his desire to start every 4 days. I just don't think you can reasonably build that into your expectations.
Right. So it's kind of a silly way of looking at it, but I'm silly. So here we go. I'm projecting 32. And if I think there's a reasonable chance that he pitches 33, 4, 35 games. So would I take the over on 32? I don't know that that's a wise bet, because that now you're also betting that he doesn't get hurt. Mm-hmm. So, as far as the probability goes, you have to sort of, counter that by he may get hurt. So I'm going to project 32. I think it's the responsible thing to do. But if it's at a point, and this is going to happen more in a best ball league, I bet, for me, than it will in a rotisserie league, because I don't think, unless I'm at the 15, 16 turn, and I just kind of have to take a pitcher because I don't want to wait to the 3rd and 4th round, I may use it as a tiebreaker and take Bauer 3rd over, after deGrom and Cole. But to me, that's how close it is the same pitcher. Now you try to figure something else out that differentiates one from the other two.
Yeah, I do expect some performance give back with Bauer, but I don't expect him to put himself back at a disadvantage and stop using whatever he
that's the key.
Yeah. Because, look, Saris has written about it. A lot of pitchers do it, and we should realistically probably just let guys use what they're using already. And
batters want them to use it, as we've talked about. Mm-hmm. Batters don't want to get hit in the head.
Yeah. Just make sure you can not hit me in the head. And if you have a nastier breaking pitch, then so be it. At least I live. Todd, one of the best pieces in the magazine this year is your article, which was in tandem with Jeff Erickson, looking at the projections process. And you mentioned, how the park, you ran things with Citi Field, you ran things with Dodger Stadium for Bauer's projection. I'm wondering, though, have you made any widespread changes to your projections with what we know or what we've heard about maybe having no universal DH, or are you still projecting as if we will have a universal DH?
Again, Jeff Erickson, as you mentioned, he handles the site's projection. So, Jeff will have to speak to what he's doing for the formal site projections. Mm-hmm. I am still more optimistic than I am pessimistic that there will be a universal DH. Mm-hmm. Every day that goes by, my optimism wanes a little bit, but I still think it'll get done. It just makes too much sense not to. Not that that's ever a reason with MLB and MLB BPA to get things done, but it makes too much sense. I think that we'll find a way to get it done. So I've not made the initial adjustments. I haven't taken them away. And what those were, again, I'm very formulaic. I start with a formulaic base and then massage as I see fit. But it was 2019 and 2018. I took the NL pitchers' numbers and I adjusted them had they faced a DH. I went back and looked at the skills, AL versus NL, DH versus no DH, and I artificially adjusted the NL pitching as if they had a DH. I can do air quotes now; people see them. As if you're on YouTube, as if they had a DH. So it's very easy. If there's no DH, I just go to Excel. I just clear columns, and the numbers adjust because the little number, the 1.02 and 1.03, they're gone. So or I may have to change them all to 1 because it's times or divided by. If I erase them, it'll be 0 and the projections will go wonky. So I changed all those to 1 and there we go. Hitting. Are we going to have to take away at bats from Dominic Smith? Yeah. Yeah, but right now I'm counting them being in there. But the pitching, to me, is more important, especially because it's not just the numbers, it's game theory. It's where you see the tiers, where you see the drop-offs, where you see the strength. You're basing your draft around the outlook, where pitchers outlay, where where they're strong and where they're weak, and whether or not NL pitches jump up and AL jump down. That's going to change the whole design, the whole texture. So you have to change your draft strategy. People may disagree, and I just have a completely different way of approaching it, and they don't care. They just kind of go on the fly and make the adjustments as if they will. But I kind of want to have a lay of the land, and you got to be fluid. I know we're talking about a million different things here at once. You have to be fluid, but I still want to have a general feel for what I'm working with and go from there.
Yeah, that's smart. There was internal debate here at RotoWire just about, should we change projections? Should we change batting orders, depth charts, and all that to advise people to draft as if there will not be a universal DH? But I made the case that I think we should be telling people to draft as if there will be a universal DH, because I still feel strongly that there will be. As you said, it just makes too much sense. And yeah, the latest report is that the players turned down the proposal for expanded playoffs, and the season's going to start on time. But reading between the lines, it sounds like they could still negotiate this, and this is still very much on the table, expanded playoffs in the universal DH. So I think it'll get done before opening day. Don't want pitchers hitting. There's already enough injury risk for pitchers in 2021. Don't need them getting hurt on the base paths or taking a pitch off the knuckle, trying to bunt. Never bunt. Trevor Bauer was the latest domino to fall, but really we got a lot falling this week, Todd. Kolten Wong to the Brewers, pretty notable. And we're going to talk with Derek Van Riper tomorrow on MLB Network Radio. He's a big Brewers fan. I want to get your take, though, on Wong to the Brewers. Start with Wong himself. Does he immediately become like a starting second base quality type of player in that park, or is he still a little fringe starter anyway in mixed leagues?
I think he's a starter. Now, the caveat is if you look at his playing time, it always looks like he's hurt once or twice a year because of the number of plate appearances and the number of games. But a lot of that, and I'm going to go back over game logs, etc., but there have been a few times over the course of his career the past few seasons where St. Louis just sat him. And healthy. They gave him a lot of days off. So I don't know how many injury stints he's had. I mean, he's only 150 games in 2015, then went 121, 108, 127, and then 148 the year before 2019. So, doing the quick average, and I love this about the site. You can click on those 5 years, and it gives you the average. He's averaged 131 games previous to 2020, and that's not all because of injury. So, if Milwaukee plays him every day, does he then play 145, 150 games? I don't know. And with his counting stats, that's going to matter a lot. I'd like to get Derek's take tomorrow, where he thinks that Wong will hit in the order. Actually, I don't think the Brewers are done. And there was a rumor that they may be going after Justin Turner. So I don't think that the batting order is a done deal. I'd like to see what Derek says. But to me, it's one of the reasons you have to ask is there's a lot of moving parts in that batting order. They could go a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. So I think that I love Wong for fantasy purposes because he steals at a high percentage clip. His success rate is very high, 60 out of 79. That's approximately 60 out of 80, which by my math is 75%, which is the point where stealing makes sense. So he's a plus base runner, and Milwaukee should get back to running again, I think. And I wish I had more Colton Wong. I know you have him in our Arizona draft. I don't remember what round, but that could turn out, this time next year when we're congratulating you for winning the Arizona Fall League, you may have to give Colton Wong part of the plaudits there.
Yeah, I'll take the championship if you just want to not play this thing out. You just want to crown me.
27th round.
What I'm planning to do is put Chris Taylor in the outfield and start Wong. So that kind of gives me some flexibility in the outfield, and just having some be able to deploy Wong in two spots, and having a guy like Chris Taylor I can move around. I'm liking my flexibility. The other implication there, well, one of them is Keston Hiura moving to first base. I really don't see that as all that notable. He'll pick up first base eligibility, which is nice. The bigger implication probably with this Brewers pitching staff. Now, behind Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, though, I still don't see all that much to like. You took Josh Lindblom in this first pitch Arizona Speakers draft, and I could see it because he had some hype coming back from overseas, but I don't know if Wong's improved up the middle defense is really going to help many of these back end types become relevant.
I think certainly doesn't hurt. And Wong's already gotten in touch with Luis Urias, his potential double play partner there, to talk about some things, to work on some things. So it certainly can't hurt. The other thing about it is every base hit that someone like Colton Wong saves, it keeps the pitcher in the windup that much longer. And some of these guys, the reason they're not very good is because they're not very good out of the stretch with runners on base. So it's not just a linear. There's like a domino, a dynamic effect there, saving some ground ball hits, et cetera, or turning a double play and getting the bases clear that way. So I think it can, and especially in that park, you want every edge you can get.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, any edge you can pick up, you want. I don't off the top of my head. I forget. People see me that are on the line. What's he doing? I'm trying to remember who the Brewers. You mentioned Burns. You mentioned Woodruff. You mentioned Lindblom. I'm spacing out on their other starters. Eric Lauer, is he still on the staff?
Yeah, he's still there. Who was that guy you kind of liked last year?
Adrian Hauser.
Yeah, Adrian Hauser.
And and our site is listing those 5, and that's it. So you'd like to think that the Brewers would add some depth.
Yeah, maybe Freddie Peralta, but I think he's pretty much strictly bullpen.
Yeah, Peralta, Suter. They're a team that could potentially play Johnny bullpen, especially when you've got Devin Williams and Josh Hader as part of that bullpen. So they could fill in, but still you need, and they may have some minor league depth, of which I'm not aware at this point as well. Although there are still, the Boston Red Sox are starting half of them, but there are still some depth starters to pick up.
Yeah, I mean, There's still quite a few notable names out there. James Paxton being one of them. By
he's
the way,
more than depth.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, assuming he's healthy. But by the way, James Anderson mentioned Justin Topa. I didn't know anything about him, but he throws like a 98-mile-per-hour bowling ball sinker, so he's a name to watch, a sleeper in that Milwaukee bullpen. What you mentioned with the guys were, just Wong saving a few guys from having to work out of the stretch. That just hadn't occurred to me, but that's really smart. Some guys just cannot replicate out of the stretch. It's weird.
Well, for the longest time, I've talked about this on occasion. I believe pitchers are two different pitchers. There's wind-up guy and the stretch guy. And I've done some looking at it, and a lot of times when there's a big discrepancy in XFIP or Sierra or FIP or DRA, whatever you want to use as your estimator, and the actual ERA, it's because the pitchers are always, not always, but on the average, pitchers better from the windup, but some pitchers are even worse from the stretch. Yeah. And if you're worse than average, that could explain why your XFIP or whatever estimator you like is so far away from your actual, because the algorithms that go into that assume the average. So on a few occasions anyway, I've been able to say, well, I don't think this guy will regress towards his expected ERA unless it's better from the stretch. And one of the pitchers at the top of my head that I'm remembering that kind of fit this narrative was Blake Snell. Mm-hmm. His Cy Young year, I don't remember exact BABIP, but he had an extremely lucky BABIP, and his walk rate from the stretch was terrible.
Yeah, some guys just can't repeat.
Yeah, so if your BABIP regresses, you're giving up more hits, and not only that, you're working from the stretch more, so your walk rate goes up. So if I recall correctly, he got hurt the next year. So even though I was right, there were other narratives that could have explained what happened. Mm-hmm. But in the back of my mind, it's always been why I've been a little bit lower on Blake Snell than other pitchers. And at one point, he kind of corroborated my thinking, because Jason Collette can talk better than this than I can. But he abandoned the windup at one point and went just from the stretch. That it seems weird. But if you do the same thing every time, it could help improve it.
I think like Alex Wood maybe tried that, or somebody else abandoned the windup.
He went back to it. For what it's worth, Snell went back to it. But at least that kind of showed me that he's aware that there was a disconnect, a disparity.
Yeah, that's just something that didn't even register in my brain with the Wong signing. That I knew obviously having a guy like that who's so good at second helps, but yeah, just the saving the guys having to, work out of the stretch just a little bit could add up and really help them. A couple other dominoes that have fallen, Todd. Alex Colome to the Minnesota Twins. I look at Taylor Rogers now, and I see maybe the chance that they do a sort of committee. We know Rocco Baldelli has been, somewhat modern in his usage, although for the most part it has been Rogers. I know he gave Sergio Romo some chances. I just look at Colome. I feel like he was probably given some assurances when he was brought in. I look at Rogers, and maybe he has a partial share of the ninth, and maybe he's still useful. But I think I'd rather target a different reliever who I feel like could wrestle away a greater share than a guy who I think is maybe capped at a marginal quarter share of the closer role.
All right, I had him pretty high in my rankings, so I have to lower him. I'm still going to have him above the Emmanuel Clases, for instance, the guys that we think are complete speculative guys.
Yeah.
Do I have him on a par with Will Smith and Adam Ottavino? I probably have to drop him below those, because I think Smith and Ottavino have a very good shot of being the guys. Mm-hmm. But I had Rogers at 35 saves initially, tied for the most, which I usually have some guys in the 40s. I may have someone in the 40s now with some of the, maybe Yates or something. I don't know. But I have to drop him. I just think he's a better pitcher. Mm-hmm. And Colome, there may be something that why he defeats the expected ERAs. But his estimators are in the 4s. That's not very good for a closer. Mm-hmm. And he's not dominant. Doesn't strike guys out. So I think there's some risk there. But no, the places that I had Rogers as my guy, at this point is going to be a mistake. He has to be your second closer or your third closer, and not that Colome is your first closer either.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see where the ADPs flesh out. And one of the great things about the NFBC is we're February 5th. We can now parse the drafts out in 3 or 4 weeks once they end, and go from February 6th to the 28th or whatever, and find out the drafts. And with all there's a lot of slower drafts, but there's also the RotoWire Online Championship. They're nailing those in one night, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There'll be enough data. And for a closer, I don't care what the format is. I just care where they're going relative to each other. Colome and Rogers. I'll be interested to see who goes first.
Yeah, the market will be totally different now for those two arms, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see. The Will Smith call is interesting because I look at him and the fact that the day he signed, I'd have Will Smith over Taylor Rogers now too, but the day they signed Will Smith, they said, look, we want this guy moving around, and they showed that last year. A lot of moving around with Mark Melancon as the guy. So he's another guy where I look at him as probably being capped with the partial share just because they've told us how they want to use him.
Yeah, so I joked about it, but I think it's true. I've got Adam Ottavino, I've got Will Smith, and I've got your guy, J.B. Wendelken, and I could have 10 saves or I could have 100. I'm going to guess closer to 10, but it's, is it unreasonable that each have the job and get 33 saves? It's within the realm. I don't think it's going to happen. I think 50. I think they'll average 16 apiece or something. But, of course, I have to have them active to get those saves. But in this particular league, it's a standalone draft championships league. So if you punt a particular category, it's not as detrimental. Although last year, when our colleague Jeffrey Zimmerman pretty much ran the table with like 145 out of 150 points. Well, you couldn't punt last year, but we'll see. I think in a full 162 or 154 or more than 60 game season, punting's going to be possible, but I don't think you want to completely punt. And hopefully, I haven't completely punted.
Yeah, absolutely. A real quick note before we move on from our friends over at Monkey Knife Fight. Now that your season-long fantasy basketball and fantasy hockey leagues have started, this is a great time to check out our friends at Monkey Knife Fight, the fastest-growing site in daily fantasy. The NHL and NBA are in full swing, and NFL playoffs are here. The time is now to take advantage of a 100% instant match, up to $50 on your first deposit by using promo code RotoWire. Visit monkeyknifefight.com and use promo code ROTOWIRE today. Todd, back to some signings. Joakim Soria to the Diamondbacks. Pretty interesting. This guy's been it's been a while since he's been the number one closer, or a number one closer. But he was that early in his career, and he's just steadily, every year compiled at least a few, essentially. So I think this may be one last hurrah for him. And like Taylor Rogers, Stephon Crichton essentially getting the red marker through his name.
Yeah, and I never even had – I assumed that somebody would be signed in Arizona, or if Crichton had the job, he would fail. So I wasn't getting any part of Crichton. So what did Soria do last year? 22 innings, 24 Ks, 10 walks, only 1 homer, 18 hits, a little bit unlucky hit rate. But, yeah, I think he'll get the job. And even though Arizona's not great, they've got some reasonable pitching. So I think there will be some save chances. Look at what Joe Jimenez did, or Shane Green with Detroit, getting exactly. A bunch of saves. So it can be done. Even Kansas City with first Kennedy and last year Trevor Rosenthal. There are saves to be had, and Greg Holland. So it's not a situation to ignore. Soria. I don't love him there, but again, not my first closer. But Eric Carabell, right time, right place in our draft. I think it was Ryan Bloomfield. It's a great pick, Eric. Well, yeah, great. Nothing. I'm tongue in cheek. Good thing watching Twitter, Eric, and making the next pick. I just
good,
kind of
good to
very
be up
gratuitous.
at that exact
Yeah.
moment.
I'm being silly here, but they're all good friends of ours.
Yeah.
But it was just an obvious move, and you can. I know someone that did the same with Chris Archer, right?
I think that one's a little sketchier though, because I feel like Soria is a pretty good bet to close. Meanwhile, Chris Archer, I have no idea. I took him blind faith in the Rays at $6.5 million. Soria is pretty interesting.
Well, let's people know round 29.
Yeah,
and then you kind of. I don't know if you purposely backed it up, but you got Shane McClanahan.
Yeah,
so
I'm pretty
kind
happy about that.
Yeah, one of the two. It's good.
Maybe neither are really deployable, but if one or both is maybe working in a primary role, that could be pretty nice. That could be okay. By the way, Rosenthal is kind of the last guy I'd say that's a free agent that I expect to close in his new home. Would you agree, or would you say maybe Melanson?
Well, the joke's already on Twitter that Melanson's going back to Atlanta and destroy everybody's high hopes about Will
probably.
Smith. Rosenthal is interesting in that he pitched really well.
Yeah, he did.
It may have looked like it was nepotism early with Mike Matheny, but he earned that role. Or he didn't so much earn it, but he deserved to keep it, and then got traded to San Diego. And I equate him to Jason Isringhausen a bit in that, stalled career as a starter because of injuries. And then Isringhausen was a good reliever for a couple years. Maybe Rosenthal extends that a little bit longer, although he's getting up there in years, maybe not. But I'm curious, is he still injury prone? Because it's now another year from the surgery. The TJS was terrible in 2019. Kind of went to Kansas City as a building block to sort of show that he's over the surgery, and boy, did he ever. So I think people are shy because of the injury prone or injury risk. He may not have it. He may be in the clear now.
Yeah.
Which is, if he goes to San Diego, which one of the rumored destinations where he, finished the year, then maybe the Drew Pomeranz shares are ruining that signing. But I think that to me, that's kind of, I don't want to say obvious, but it certainly makes sense that San Diego would be a prime destination.
Yeah, they liked him enough to bring him in last year at the deadline, and I see that being a likely fit for him. It's amazing. I've talked about this with you on the show, maybe not this exact pod, but one of the shows we do, about how I was curating the list for last year's A to Z, and we write up 1,240 players for the magazine, and Trevor Rosenthal didn't make the list for me. Last year, he was coming off that horrible season. He was DFA'd by the Tigers in August and didn't pitch again, wasn't picked up. But the Royals gave him a shot. Matheny liked what he saw, and he's rehabbed his value. Good for him. These players, especially the closers, and even Colton Wong, who we talked about, I love targeting these guys in drafts right now because the second they sign, they jump 3 rounds.
Right. And we've talked at a couple different places on our XS series spot earlier in the day. I had a lot of times a choice between Cesar Hernandez and Kolten Wong, and I went with Hernandez. And I wish I went with Wong in one or two of those cases. 'Cause as much as I like Hernandez, and I think he's going to be fine with the Indians, Wong's potential with the steals and the homers and everything else with the Brewers. You got him in the 27th. Where do you think is ADP? 17th? Is it going to be a 10-round difference or even higher? Because I think he's a mid to high teens pick at this. I think it's a 10-round difference. I think in the 17th that you got to start, if not earlier, considering Kolten Wong at this point.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. He was a free agent, then he landed in a great park, and these guys will just explode. And I remember doing draft champions with Vlad Sedler and Jeff just before this one started, and that was right before Brad Hand had signed, and he was just plummeting like a rock. And I got him, and I think Rosenthal fits that mold right now where people are just a little hesitant because he's unsigned, but then the second he does put pen to paper, he will immediately.
Unless it's Colorado.
Yeah, that's I guess possible, but I don't know why anybody would want to go there. Sean Doolittle needs to be mentioned too.
Well, I can think of one reason. Oh, anyway, not for me, but anyway.
Sean Doolittle to the Reds. He's another guy with that experience, but a lot of injuries. I don't see him having any assurances coming into the Reds. And I think, while with a guy like Colome in hand, they probably want to sign with that assurance. I think Doolittle is a reasonable guy. He doesn't really have like a huge ego, it doesn't seem like. And I feel like he is fine without that title. So I fully expect either Amir Garrett or Lucas Sims to close still.
Right. And I kind of like their Twitter battle. I'm sure you've been following that. And it's kind of like a professional wrestling
it's like a feud
between the two of them. It's kind of, I like it. I'm with you. And Doodle, if nothing else, I don't think he's healthy or durable enough to be a full-time closer. Mm-hmm. Is he going to get a chance or two? Perhaps. Yeah, sure. But I'm not drafting to be a closer, and I'd rather mention Emmanuel Clase. There's probably 10 non-closers that I would rather draft over Sean Doolittle in the hopes that he gets saves. So it's not. I mean, give me Tanner Rainey of his old club, or one of his old clubs at this point, as far as Doolittle goes.
Yeah, I get why maybe some people thought Doolittle, maybe still think Doolittle's going to be the guy, and he was a guy who, when that signing happened, the guy on the clock in our first pitch draft, I think, took him, which is smart because it could very well be him, but I don't expect them, and especially because Amir Garrett's been so open about wanting to at least compete for the role. I think they're going to give him a chance. Archer, you mentioned earlier. Again, I just kind of have some blind faith, so I did jump him quite a bit. We'll see. It's total unknown coming back from thoracic outlet syndrome. Some picks I wanted to talk about here, though, Todd. In this draft, we're doing with an all-star cast of fantasy players and analyst Steve Gardner, Vlad Sedler, Paul Spohr, Tristan Cockcroft, Eric Carabell, Greg Ambrosius, Jeff Zimmerman, Derek Van Riper, Jeff Erickson, Jeff Barton, Doug Dennis, Ryan Bloomfield, and Ray Murphy. Pretty cutthroat draft, and it's been fun. We're pushing to the back fifth of this. We're in the 40th round of this draft and hold. And a lot of people on Twitter, whenever I tweet out like my first few picks of a draft, they're more interested in these later picks. So I wanted to talk with you about a few of these.
Well, you may be in the 40th round, but I'm in the 43rd. You're behind a couple of rounds, my friend.
I was rounding down, I guess. Yes. These picks are getting a little ugly. I did take Aristides Aquino. That April, or I guess August of 2019 seems like a lifetime ago now. But some of the picks I wanted to ask you about on your side, Todd, including one outfielder in particular. You were tweeting about him after the fact, but Edward Olivares, maybe it was just in the chat room in the draft, but you were mentioning how he has some sneaky speed, and I really haven't been on him because I guess I'm just looking on the surface, and you dug a little deeper and you like what you saw with Edward Olivares. Yeah,
he did not attempt to steal last year, but he's got a history of stealing bases. Now, we were talking about closers. He may have even been wasn't that who they got for Rosenthal?
Yes, he was traded in the Rosenthal deal.
Right.
Yes.
So he was acquired for Rosenthal. So there's advantages and disadvantages to doing projections and looking at players with a spreadsheet. It doesn't miss things. So when I did 3-year average and this and that, wow, there it's floating up to the top that Oliver stole some bases. So he made me do a little bit of a deeper dive. And my draft was deficient in speed by design, thinking I was going to get Olivares and Jared Oliva, who I also got. But I think a lot of people look at last year's goose egg, not just steals, but attempts. And I don't want to say fluke, but he's kind of off the radar. Even people that just sort by last year's stats. Oh, I need steals. I don't have time to research it. Just sort by steals from last year. Mm-hmm. He didn't get any. So
I've been guilty of doing that myself.
Well, I don't think it's guilty. I think it's just what we do. I think we're in a hurry, especially in the 40th round, et cetera. I think it's just part of, But the point being, I had him on my radar for steals. I don't know if he's going to play. I think he should, but Mike Matheny hasn't called me yet to ask me what he should do for the outfield. Mm-hmm. But in this round, in this late, especially with a guy for steals, when I say draft one of these guys, I don't know that I'm not expecting to be in my lineup. But if, Corey Dickerson is hurt for a weekend and I need a replacement, this is when I put this guy in, Jared Olivo or Olivares, and I hope I get lucky and he gets a steal. Or I take a look at the schedule, and which is part of what I do on the Friday, or not Friday, but the Sunday column for the site. I see what the best matchup for stolen bases are, and okay, Wilson Ramos is with Detroit, right? Ramos is terrible at throwing. Mm-hmm. Part of that was because he was with the Mets, who are terrible at holding runners on, but Ramos's arm is terrible. So when Kansas City plays Detroit for 4 games on Monday through Thursday, I have Olivares in my lineup then. Mm-hmm. Maybe over David Peralta, who's a better player, but I'm looking for 3 steals or 2 steals in that period. So all this is great on paper. In a DC, it's easy to pull it off because it's so deep. When we start talking about main event teams, once you start getting injuries, it's a lot harder to pull this off. Mm-hmm. But it sure sounds great on February 5th that this is how we're going to plan to manage the teams.
Well, yeah, and when you have this many bench spots in a league like this, I think it's a nice pick. And yeah, this was just a player who was flying under my radar, but 95th percentile sprint speed in his small sample, and he can hit a little bit. I think maybe just because, I didn't see this guy on James's top 400, and he was traded for 2 months or 1 month of Trevor Rosenthal, I just kind of thought, and maybe he is just meh, but he can hit a little bit.
James, he's blaming you.
Yes. James, if you're listening, you didn't have this guy on your 400. This is all your fault. But at every stop on the farm, except for one, he's been, pretty much well above average by WRC plus. So he can hit a little bit, on-base skills lacking. But, yeah, maybe if things don't go so well for this Royals team, I know they're kind of like semi-competing. But maybe if things don't go well, maybe they turn to these younger guys and give them a long audition.
When did the Royals ever care about OBP?
That's a good point. That's probably a perfect spot for him. 4% walk rate last year. But, I just – when you took him, I had to do a little look in and, you opened my eyes. Plus, Jason Collette actually wrote about Edward Olivares and his finding value in the Scrap Heap article for the magazine. You guys are smarter than me, so listen to Todd and Jeff. You also took Jose Quintana, kind of a forgotten man. Was drafted as like a staff filler for many years, not like a high upside guy, but when he was with Chicago, people liked him. And of course he was flipped at the deadline, put another $1 in the
in the dinner in the steak jar.
I don't know if it was a deadline deal at all, but he was of course traded for Eloy, and that doesn't look so good anymore for that Cubs team. But do you think Quintana's maybe got a year left where he can be a streamer, and especially out west, he can take advantage of a few matchups?
Yeah, exactly. And again, we have to tell everybody what round so they don't think we're totally goofballs. 31st round, right? 31st round. The pitcher before him was Alec Mills, and the pitcher taken after him was Chris Bubich. So that's the range we're talking about here. And I'm kind of a safer guy as far as that goes. So sure, you nailed it. Decent park. I won't say decent team, but who knows at this point with the Angels. A little bit more injury lately, but still durable enough that, if in a 26-week season, if he's in my lineup 5 weeks, and as we'll talk about a lot on this Friday podcasts, well, we don't know the schedule. Well, we know the schedule. We assume it's the right thing, but there's just fewer 2-start weeks. So we can't say I'm picking him up for 2-start weeks. They're just, in the course of a season, a guy like Quintana may have 3 2-start weeks over the course of a season.
Yeah, especially if they go with the 6-man, which they've talked about. And they brought in Alex Cobb, who went a few rounds later. Somewhat interesting. He went in the 33rd round. The Angels acquired him on Monday. So they're loading up. I almost think, this bodes pretty poorly for Shohei Ohtani's chances. Do you read into that? Like, do you think this is an indication that they're not expecting many innings from Shohei Ohtani?
No, I'm not going there. I think it's part of it is feeding into the easier to keep Ohtani on a once-a-week schedule if we have all these other guys to float around him. But none of these pitchers that the Angels were brought in are Joe durable. Yeah. So these things, including Alex Cobb, right? These things tend to flesh themselves out. But, no, the Angels, wow. I mean, it reminded me a little bit like of Texas. last year when Texas went with the 5 stable guys, they weren't all that good when Kyle Gibson and Jordan Lyles are two of your guys. Mm-hmm. But it looks like the Angels aren't there yet. They're still using the old spaghetti method. Instead of seeing what sticks, they're trying to figure out what stays healthy.
Yeah, it's fascinating, that club, because they're kind of in this weird state where they have to compete. But realistically, like, can they, even with Mike Trout and Ohtani and all these guys? We'll see. They're at least trying, and that can't be said for a lot of teams right now. I just look at Ohtani. He's kind of one of the great mysteries of this year. Like, what's he going to contribute? How often is he going to be the DH? It's up in the air. I mean, I love the talent. And I was talking about, on a per-inning basis, some of those guys like T.J. Antone and others, Tony Gonsolin, I like quite a bit. It's just going to be tough for Ohtani, because you just don't know where to use him.
Right. So thinking about the Angels, Dylan Bundy, top of the rotation, then, okay, he's fairly reliable. Ohtani, Heaney, Griffin Canning, Quintana, Cobb, Jamie Barria, Sandoval. I mean, does Dylan Bundy start every 5th day and they figure out the rest? Or do we need to downgrade Bundy because he only may get 26 or 27 starts?
That's a good question, man.
I know I'm the one that's supposed to, that's my job.
My opinion would be to downgrade him a little bit, because I do think they're going to have to, and they want to, give these guys some extra days off. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, or does it just work out that someone's always hurt and it just he gets his 30? But I don't know that you can, unless, we're going to say it all the time, except the horses. I don't think you can expect 30 or 32 from anybody except DeGrom and Cole and Bieber and Bauer. It's at the top 5 or 6. I don't think you can, logically or practically expect 30, 32 starts from anybody but the complete iron. Although, we'll talk about too as we go on. When we're doing our profile and outlooks for the site, we're realizing that these guys they're throwing during the camp and they're throwing during the summer. So just because the guy got 42 innings, I think they weren't the high leverage throwing the ball in anger, but these guys did a lot of throwing over the summer. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's a complete 100 inning jump. I mean, it may say 42 on their back of their baseball card, but it was probably closer to 70, 80, or 90. The arm thinks they threw 90 innings.
Right. That's a really good point, because they were able to throw throughout the – I should probably stop saying that, because you make a lot of good points. But I think guys were able to throw a lot throughout the lockdown. Obviously not in a game situation, but they were able to keep their arm in shape. And, I think while we can't expect many 200 innings, I don't expect, a lot of regulars who've been pitching in the majors for a while to be capped at 100. I think 150-ish for the veterans and 200 for the very top guys. A real quick note before we wrap things up today. Sports bettors know that magic happens when you turn a hunch into action and apply the right amount of expertise. That's why BetMGM has teamed up with RotoWire to offer a new BetMGM customers a free 6-month RotoWire subscription when they place their first bet. Register on the BetMGM app or the website and use promo code ROTO to claim your free subscription. Once you make your first sports wager, you'll receive a season's length of RotoWire's unmatched sports insights. Find out why BetMGM is the king of sportsbooks by signing up and placing your first bet today. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager. Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, and New Jersey only. Please gamble responsibly. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado and Nevada, and 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey and West Virginia. In Tennessee, call or text the Red Line at 800-889-9789. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada. Just a couple of names I wanted to throw at you again. These are...
What we have breaking news.
Let's hear it. What is it?
Free agent this is from Ken Rosenthal. So I don't want to say take it with a grain of salt, but until I hear from Jonathan Scope's agent, I may not agree. Scope has signed a 1-year, $4.5 million deal with the Tigers.
Nice. Yeah, there
Tigers.
I see it now. I was actually profiling him recently. And I realized this guy's not that bad. I mean, he kind of just does his thing low on base.
Yeah.
But, he had a rebound defensively last year, right? I think that's what it was that I was looking at. And just an underrated player.
Right. I'm trying to call up my Detroit playing time grid. I don't know who. I have a suspicion I had an open spot because I off the top, I mean, I kind of had Willie Castro as already being kind of a utility type guy, and Nico Goodrum as well. So I think I was probably saving a spot for Scope, and whether it was Scope or somebody else. CJ Cron, speaking of unsigned players who aren't terrible, is still out there. And Cron's always been sort of a favorite of mine. Not, one reason being I play in a fantasy football league with him, but just I've always liked him as a hitter. So I don't have the spot open. I do have Willie Castro at second base. I think I probably just moved him there. But Scope will now get the playing time. Who may lose? Nico Goodrum probably will lose. Be back into a more of a utility role. I would think, because Candelario very curious to find out how much of the power he gained stays. Harold Castro, he's the guy that I have ranked or given a significant amount of playing time. I'm going to have to dock. So all you Harold Castro stands out there, apologies if you drafted him early.
Yeah, you those 50 round 50 picks on Harold Castro, not going to probably pan out. But it looks like I'm back up on this clock. But some of the picks I made that I just want to throw at you real quick, like just get your thoughts. Some of these reserve rounds. Tim Locastro, speed being the name of the game. Who knows? But then I took Reyes Moronta as well. Any thoughts on who the Giants closer might be? Do you think it's Moronta, Tyler Rogers? Any guesses?
Didn't they just sign? Well, they just signed a batter, but
Tommy Listella.
Listella is not going to close. No, I thought there was some tell of one of the lesser relievers or someone going to the Giants. I don't know. I don't even know that I've put too much thinking into that because I don't know how many.
It's probably the wise call.
Saves. I think Moronta is. He's got as good a shot as anybody. And where you got him compared to some of the other dart throws that have been made, I think that's fine.
I mean, he throws hard. I think he missed all last year. Was it Tommy John? I think he's had Tommy John. So it's big injury risk, but probably the most electric arm in that bullpen. And we know they like to use Tyler Rogers in a variety of roles.
Yeah, I keep hearing my computer. I need to turn things down. I'm getting used to my new microphone and headphones and what needs to be on here and there. So sorry, folks.
Oh, I couldn't even hear it. But thanks. Anyway.
Well, maybe it's in my headphones and people aren't hearing it. Sorry, folks. Take that back. But Moronta, especially where you're getting him. All right, he's not with Tommy John. He doesn't close till July. I don't think Clay Link cares. I think for where he got him, if he can get 10 second half saves, he's thrilled.
Oh, of course. I'm pumped. And kind of same with Locastro. Like if I have to stream him in, I get 5 steals or 10 steals.
Okay. I remember what Doug Dennis, our colleague from Baseball HQ, the bullpen guru, and I think this is just more, stirring up some chat on Twitter, was, kind of wondering if Alex Wood will be the Giants closer.
That's interesting. He's not really a guy I even thought about as a closer because he's been a starter for most of his career. But who was the guy that started last year? Was it Gott? That didn't work out well. He got off to a really good start, but then he imploded.
He torpedoed my Tutler season.
Yeah, he imploded big time. He was looking really good early.
Oh yeah, and then three straight. This is when I'm trying to remember. I picked who the original Tony Watson. So we weren't sure who was going to get the job. But another dark horse and this is making me laugh because he was so terrible earlier in his career. Matt Whistler has carved out a nice career as a reliever.
That's a good call. He actually is pretty interesting.
Silvino Bracco, who was the closer and waiting, if you will, for the Diamondbacks for a little while. So they've got some possibilities. But I mean, I have Reyes Moronta for 25% of the Giant saves. So at that point, and Tyler Rogers for 25, and then 50% open. So that's just what I do at this point of the year. What I kind of say is, well, it's a 25% probability that so and so gets the job, so I give him 25% of the saves, and et cetera. Instead of just coming up with a number. But that gets narrowed down. John Brebbia, who had some success with the Cardinals, didn't pitch at all last year, so all these guys maybe aren't in the picture till next or the second half. But no, I mean, at this point, what round did you get Moronta in? I mean, 30 something,
something like that. My personal laptop just died, but it was something like that. I know I'm on the clock, so I won't keep you all waiting for too much longer. But yeah, fun times, and these rounds are where you separate yourself in theory. But right now, all these guys are looking pretty iffy, and there's going to be a few diamonds in the rough. The other name I have here is Hanser Alberto, just because Nicky Lopez is so bad, and Hanser Alberto is pretty good against lefties at least. You could stream him in the half weeks when they got a couple lefties due up. No real chance he wrestles away the primary job at second, do you think?
I think Casey's going to want to see what they have in Nicky Lopez. He was one of the bigger disappointments. Mainly because there just wasn't anybody else to bid on when he wasn't a trade, but he kind of come up near the deadline. So AL only leagues.
I think he was part of Fabapalooza.
Right.
And people spent on him, and he was a big bust, and he hasn't really shown much of anything. Yeah,
people expected him to run, and he didn't even do that. I mean, Alberto, has there been a quieter 300 hitter the past couple of years?
I know. Against righties, he's pretty bad, but he makes up for it against lefties.
Yeah. And again, the KC, they don't get to face their own staff, but they get to face the Tigers, and there will be opportunities to put Alberto in. What kind of eligibility does he bring into the season?
I think
is he multiple?
Second base only, actually, but
yeah, he's apt to pick up 5 games. Although, I don't know that he'll be at shortstop much with Mondesi, but he'll, who knows?
Yeah, I just wanted to at least mention it because, I mean, it's not exciting, but it's a reserve pick. And, yeah, in the NFBC with the half weeks, these are the kind of guys, the short end platoon guys that, you'll probably end up using here or there. Todd, I want to talk to you about your Z-Files probably tomorrow on the MLB Network show with Derek. That should be a lot of fun. Check it out for yourself. Z-Files, rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial. We're pushing up on the hour mark, though, so anything else you want to mention before we sign off? And then, again, we're back tomorrow, but anything else today that you want to mention?
Have you been assigned to a TGFBI league yet?
Not yet. I'm waiting.
I haven't either. Either we're in the same league, and they're drum roll going to announce that late, or do you think they skipped us?
I don't think so because hey, we've both won, so you can't leave the winners out. Maybe we're in the winners league.
We're up to League 17, and I'm still waiting. So that'd be fine. I'd welcome the opportunity to go head to head with Clay Link. That would be fun. I like being pressured or pushed to stay on my game. That would be great.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get Justin on sometime to talk about the procedure, what he went through to set this up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Justin Mason, I'm talking about friends with fantasy benefits, and a couple podcasts as well. But other than that, I think we've been joking about it. I've got spring fever in a big way. I think part of it is because I started so early, preparing content and such. I want to turn the TV on and I want to watch a ball game. I know people saying go to MLB Network and watch an old game. I'm ready for baseball. It'll hit me for a weekend and I'll get back into it. But right now, maybe the football game on Sunday. But I have got spring fever to the max, man.
Me too. I cannot wait to see some ball players on the field. Just hearing the catcher's mitt pop. There's something about that I love.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. By the way, Todd, congrats again on the FSWA Hall of Fame induction. And that will be, next week? It's going to be on air, right?
It's going to be on air. I can look up we'll tweet it out. It's from 2 to 4 on the Andy Behrens is going to join his old buddies. Blanking. Brad Evans. How can I blank on Brad Evans? And Brandon Funston on their show, on the Fade the Noise show. And so I think I'm going to be on 3 p.m. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it might be Tuesday. Rick Wilton, my fellow inductee, will join us. And this is where they're going to hand out all the awards. And as Peter Schenke is proud to do every year, and rightfully so, likes to tweet out that RotoWire has once again led the pack in FSWA nominations. I know Jeff Erickson's been nominated in the writing category for baseball. There's been several writers in all the sports, and the podcast and the radio show is also up for awards. So I'm sitting this one out, but it's okay. I'm
you got plenty.
If all years to miss it, I'm not. I'm glad to root on my colleagues and my friends.
Yeah, well, it's well deserved, this Hall of Fame induction, and I'll be listening. And yeah, congrats to everybody who worked on our magazine, well, this year and last year, because the magazine is nominated. So I'll be pretty anxious to see who takes that down. Congrats to all the other nominees. A lot of great work being done in this industry, Todd. And the bar continues to raise, and I'm proud of it, really, just the community as a whole.
I think it pushes both of us to continue to try to stay, I don't want to say stay ahead of the field. That's a little bit, not really what I mean to say, but to stay at the top of our games, because
you get pushed by others.
Yeah,
great
absolutely.
Work.
Absolutely. I think we both relish that challenge.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for your insight, Todd. Thank you all for listening. Todd and I will be back tomorrow on MLB Network Radio, 5 to 6 Eastern, if you want to join us then. Otherwise, we'll be back next Friday. Hope you'll join us on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast.
Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.